Greetings, Andy here again, and this is the second episode of my sort of three-part mini-series, shall we call it, where I'm sort of reflecting on some of the diversity and some of my favourite albums based on picking a single album per letter of the alphabet. And in doing this, what I'm trying to do is sort of reflect across genre, across time. So I've got at least one, and several from some decades, but at least one from every decade I've been alive, from the 50s right up to the current decade. There are, in fairness, a sort of weighting towards the 70s and the 90s, because those are my two favourite decades for music. But you know, I'm trying to pick albums which I haven't necessarily talked about a lot as well, so a bit of variation. Now, if you saw the last episode and were paying attention at the end, you might remember that I said I would be doing this episode after I'd done my monthly roundup of new releases. And at the time, obviously, I was a bit confused about dates, because this week is still in May, so I shall be doing it at the end of next week. I've still got a couple of albums which haven't arrived to cover, so I'm carrying on with the second one, and I'm going through, starting with the letter I and carrying through to Q. Lots of choice on Q, as you might imagine, and I'll come to that when we get there. So let's get started. And an album from the 2000s. So this was released in 2002. It's one of my favourite bands, and it is, of course, Porcupine Tree and their album In Absentia. And this, it's always a bit of a toss-up. Which one do I prefer between this and Fear of a Blank Planet? But this really is one of my favourites. It's certainly a great one to try out first as well. And it's the first album which Gavin Harrison, the great drummer, joined them on. Some great tracks, staples of their live act: Blackest Eyes, Trains, The Sound of Muzak, Wedding Nails, The Crater has a master tape, and so on, Collapse of the Light into Earth. It's a really cracking album. As I say, it's 2002. This was a later remaster. I didn't have it at the time. I got it sort of slightly later, about probably mid-2000s, but in a digital copy. And so I bought this vinyl version about 5 years ago, I guess. So there we go. That's In Absentia from 2002. Then we go back a decade to 1993 now. And I sort of, is it prog, isn't it prog? I always think of them as prog, but Ozric Tentacles and their greatest album, In My Humble, which is Jurassic Shift. As I say, this came out in 1993. I always say, well, you know, if they're not prog, I don't know what they are, because they are weird, and you can tell it from the artwork there. Led by one Ed Wynn, who's the guitarist and sort of leader and does all their production, etc. And this was remastered by Ed in 2020. I was quite late to them. I didn't really pick them up in the 90s. It's probably the best part of 15-20 years afterwards I came across them, and absolutely love them. And this album, as I say, it's a reissue, as a lot of these are. It's very resplendent in pink, sort of semi-transparent pink, to match the artwork. And now we come to a jazz classic, because I do like a bit of jazz, and possibly one of the greatest classics of all time. It's my entry for the 50s, and it's letter K, and of course I'm talking about Kind of Blue by Miles Davis, an absolute classic. It's obviously just about everyone has this in their collection if they like a bit of jazz, and it's you know, there's only 5 tracks on this, so they're all sort of reasonably long tracks, and it's just, you know, just Miles. You've got Julian Adderley on sax, John Coltrane on sax, Bill Evans on piano, and so on, Jimmy Cobb on drums. It's just a stupendously classic album, and you know, what can I say? Everyone knows it. It's a wonderful album, and this is obviously a later reissue, and it's on blue vinyl. So, and back to the 90s, and possibly what is by many considered to be the greatest shoegaze album, and I do like a bit of shoegaze, and of course I'm talking about My Bloody Valentine and Loveless, and this is another reissue. I did have this on CD back in the 90s, but sort of later on, mid 90s, I think I got it. 91 it actually came out, and it's how many tracks on there? 11 tracks. Fuzzy, really sort of fuzzy, scuzzy guitar by Kevin Shields on there. Lots of guitar work, some sort of gentle bits, some scuzzy, loud bits. It's just an all-time classic for looking at one's shoes, and just a black vinyl, single LP. So we come to M, and here we have a band and an album beginning with the letter M, and of course I'm talking about Mezzanine by Massive Attack. Absolutely stupendous. Still in the 90s, of course, on this one. 98 this came out. And it was the one which really, I'd sort of listened to Massive Attack and quite liked it, but I hadn't bought anything before this. And this absolutely knocked me sideways. It was so fabulous. I immediately went out and bought the CD, and then went back and bought the previous CDs as well. The opening handful of tracks, it opens with Angel, which I think is absolutely magnificent. Rising Sun, and of course the classic Teardrop, and Inertia Creates. It's just an all-round amazing album. It just absolutely brilliant. I can't say enough about it. And obviously, I bought it, as I said, I bought it CD when it was released, and this much later, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago or something, a vinyl reissue, and it's a double because it was on CD, just black vinyl. Now the next one, N, and we're back to the 70s, 71 this is. I was so umming and ahhing when I did the first few letters when it got to F. One of my favourite albums of all time, of course, is Foxtrot, but I have talked about it an awful lot. But I've got to include some Genesis. So I'm going to the preceding album from Foxtrot and Nursery Crime, which is almost, to me, the run of 3 of Nursery Crime, Foxtrot, and then Selling England by the Pound are just absolutely magnificent. And this is so quirky as well. Some great, all the track listings inside and lyrics, and scratching a musical box, the Fountain of Salmacis, the Return of the Giant Hogweed, brilliant, and the quirky Harold the Barrel. Now, we had for years and years and years it was like an old whiskey barrel, which had been converted into a water butt, and it was on the front drive, and we always called it Harold. And I wanted to, when we first got it, I wanted to stencil the word Harold on the front just to irritate the neighbours, but I was banned from doing it. It unfortunately finally died earlier this year, and I got rid of it because it was just leaking everywhere. And this is an original. It's not a first press, but it's sort of probably from about 73. I think I bought this around the same time as Foxtrot. Though I'd heard it a lot of times originally. So we come to O, and back to the 90s again, and I've got to include at least one album from this band, and it's the absolute classic OK Computer by Radiohead, of course. Now this is 20th anniversary reissue release. Obviously I had it on the CD like everyone else. I had it on CD from when it was released, and it was one of the ones that I always wanted to get a vinyl copy. This is actually a triple album because it's got a load of bonus tracks which were recorded at the time but didn't make it onto the disc. And then of course after this they really moved on and changed style with Kid A. So those tracks which didn't make the original cut didn't weren't reused subsequently until they did this. So, OK Computer, an absolute all-time classic, and as I say, this is a triple. Now we're back to the 70s. We're switching really between the 70s, mostly between the 70s and the 90s on this one, but with a bit of in between. And it's the letter P, 1971 again, and this is a real soul stroke jazz classic, and it's Gil Scott-Heron, Pieces of a Man. And you know, it includes the first side is more sort of soul with a bit of proto rap, shall we call it, you know, thinking of The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, Save the Children, Lady Day and John Coltrane. It's just superb. And the second side is much more jazz, like with Pieces of a Man, Sign of the Ages, etc. Just a cracking record. Always liked it. I never had it on CD. Probably before I bought this a few years ago, I'd listened to probably half the tracks on the album, streamed them or heard them on the radio, and I always liked it. And it's such a classic album. So I bought this fairly recent reissue. I don't know what's. Yeah, just black vinyl. And then we come to our last one for this episode, Q. And the first letter where I had a choice of one. So literally one that I could identify. And you're probably thinking, well, it's got to be the Who, hasn't it? But no, I don't have Quadrophenia. I don't have it in any format. Bad me. I mean, I like the Who, but I'm not sort of like a real Who head. I've never owned Quadrophenia or Tommy for that matter. And the only other one, what else could it be? Well, it's got to be Queen, hasn't it? And this is Queen 2. It's actually the sideways on. Again, this is another reissue, though I did have it at the time, or in the mid 70s. Unfortunately, when I separated from my first wife, she had the Queen albums basically, so this was a fairly recent reissue, I think maybe even last year, which I picked up direct from the band actually, funnily enough. What can I say? I mean, it's Queen. You either like them or you don't, and you know, this is a really early Queen, just when they were beginning to really hit it, you know, some great tracks, and it ends with the magnificent Seven Seas of Rye, which was the first song I heard from them on the radio, which was a wow moment. So there they are in all their glory, and just black vinyl was nice heavyweight, good, really good recording. So there we are, quick run through of some of my albums I really like based on the letter of the alphabet, and we're going to finish. Probably will be after done the new releases update, because I really, you know, could do with doing that next week. Of course, we're going to finish there. So we're going to go from what's after QR, I had to think about it, to Z. And needless to say, in there's another couple of letters where I really struggled to identify. I had one of each, and one of those is a CD. I thought I was going to have to pass on one, and then I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, I can think of an album I've got beginning with that particular letter. It won't take much working out what those are. So thanks for watching again. Cheers.